Wow, I did not think that Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the re-release of Fresh Classic would have this much drama and cringe stuff going on around speedrunning, but alas, it does.
So there's so much to talk about. Hey, um, I just have to make a quick video about this. Shout out to Dwarflord and his version of explaining the craziness that has been going on over the last 24 hours in classic anniversary fresh. It's a little hard to explain what this version of World of Warcraft is, but we're just going to get into it. So shout out to Kupski for this VOD view that I'm looking at today of the fastest molten core. And I want to try and explain these things concisely because I feel like Dwarf Lord's story is a little bit all over the place, but it's so hard to explain some of these things if you're not in the know and understanding of what I'm talking about in like some level of depth. But I'm just going to try and talk for the first 2-3 minutes here, like super high level of what this is, what you're looking at right here. So, World of Warcraft, a video game, maybe you played it 15, 20 years ago. That's this version. World of Warcraft progressively advanced over the course of all this time, right? Well, now, in addition to that version that's progressed over all this time through different expansions and stuff, there's a new old version that started from scratch from the beginning. And they've done that a couple times now, and this is one of those versions of the new old fresh anniversary. So this is a 40-man group of people that are very experienced at playing the game, that are working together using their skill, their knowledge, their preparation to clear a instance as fast as possible, a raid. And it's something that for most groups would take you like an hour, 2 hours. It's a little hard to quantify like what is average and that kind of stuff. Like there's a lot of metrics that you could look at for that because it's all tracked, and lots of these guys really care, right? So for a lot of these raids, they just care more about the loot or having a good time, but these raids are clearly focused about execution and speed. There's a group online that care about going the fastest, and that's what the logs are for. Logs will show you your time, what you pressed, how much damage you did, how much healing happened, how much damage you took, all sorts of metrics. And that's fun for people to look at back later and for people to talk about how they themselves were the best in the group or the best in a certain group, or the best ever, right? People want to be the best. So that's the goal of this group here. They're trying to be the fastest, do the most damage, not have any deaths, be perfect. And they ended up being the fastest time. So that's just a little bit of the background. They were the fastest time. Well, were they? Here comes the controversy. So I tried to break it down into a little bit of a chart here. So let's just talk about the start here again. Logs, fresh, bricked. So let's talk about this group. Bricked, they're the best, like I said. So they were the first people to clear this instance 4 months ago. 4 or 5 years ago, the groups that were the fastest, a lot of them have disbanded. Some of them are still together, but this group has really, in the past 6 months, year now, formed together to be a very invested group, we'll say. So they're spending a lot of time on this game, and they've just played it a lot before. Like I said, this isn't new, so lots of these guys know what they're doing and just understand how to be optimal and efficient with it compared to other groups that have a little bit more learning, or just infrastructure is hard to create in video games because it's not like these guys are getting paid. In other versions of World of Warcraft, like the retail version of the game, there's more established like pay structures, and people have more incentives to play. They get paid more for streaming. None of these guys here in this raid are getting paid to play the game in the sense that they have thousands of viewers donating to them, or contracts. that kind of stuff that you're going to see in retail or other versions of the game more. So for that reason, here comes the interesting factor now. Did they have the fastest clear? So logs, just to get in a little bit more detail now with logs, these guys have been buzzing through this instance, but here's the interesting thing. I talked about that there's 40 people in this group. At the start here, you're only seeing 20 people in this group. If you look, there's a bunch of people that are grayed out. They're not nearby. That means they're somewhere else in this instance. So there's two separate groups right now that are killing mobs and bosses at different points in this raid. So in Molten Core, it's kind of a unique raid compared to future raids that are going to be coming out soon that are more sequenced, or I don't know, one after another. In this, it's an open raid where you can have people start in one area and people start in another area because there's no gates or things that are preventing you from doing that. So I didn't pull up the correct video here. I know that it's in Dwarf Lord's video briefly where it shows it. So
stipulation.
They had to pre-clear. That's a buzzword that you're gonna hear now. Is in the other raids where it's more sequenced, you're going in kind of a straight order and you're killing all this stuff one after another and kind of a more established route. But when it's an open world and you can start in all these different places, it creates more opportunities for innovation and skipping certain things. And now because you can skip, there's different mobs that patrol throughout, and if you're able to skip, maybe you could miss those mobs if you had perfect timing. Well, if you're able to miss those mobs if you have perfect timing, why not just have perfect timing every time by killing those mobs in advance before you start the raid? So before the run even starts, they're just going to go on in as a 40-man unit and kill a bunch of the stuff that doesn't matter. And in these normal raids that are taking like 2 hours or an hour, dad groups that are not super serious about it, that just log on for an hour at night, they're going to go in a more sequence established pattern where they're starting from the beginning and they're working their way to the end. Where these speedrunners, they are running on into the middle, clearing stuff out, and then going back to the start. So a speedrun that we're going to see here that takes 15 minutes, well, they had to do all this stuff before the speedrun started, and in reality it took more, like an hour, hour and a half. These clear raids that you're going to see here, you see it's like 9:05 when they were starting. It was like 8:15, so it took them like 45 minutes to clear the raid before they even started, and then they clear in 15 minutes. So it takes them an hour. So lots of contentiousness, and people are not happy that this is the strategy. They don't want to have to go in the instance and spend extra time clearing it out in order to just clear the raid. They just want to play the game, right? So there starts being these extra prerequisites to be able to be qualified for the fastest run according to the logs. There is a set group that is in control of managing the logs. They are donated money in order to manage the servers, and it's created this kind of like weird power structure where these guys can decide things, and like the community does decide in a sense. They get to vote on some things, but at the end of the day, it's really up to these people that, haven't been voted to be appointed. They're just willing to actually deal with the craziness of the people that are involved in the speedruns. Because, like I said, these guys are very invested, knowledgeable. They've been doing this for a long time. Tend to be a little deranged, to be real with you. So now we're watching the fastest run, 14:49. In this run, they all start as one group, and they work their way through, and they blast it down, but again, stuff is pre-cleared. So when I say they all work their way through one at a time. It's a little silly because everything has to be pre-cleared. And why does everything has to be pre-cleared? Now the history. So no one was pre-clearing molten core. It didn't happen. And then Bricked started to hide their logs. The number one group, they didn't start publishing anything. They went pure dark. They didn't show VODs, they didn't talk about what they were doing, and that made other people start thinking, well, if you're hiding what you're doing, that means that you're being sketchy and you're skipping stuff. So because you're skipping stuff, you're pre-clearing, and we're going to start pre-clearing. So people started assuming that pre-clearing was happening, so other people pre-cleared. So once EU started to pre-clear, then NA started to pre-clear. So Eternal, like you're seeing here, they were pre-clearing. And then once everyone else was starting to pre-clear, well, now Bricked has to actually start pre-clearing because they hid logs. So if logs weren't hidden, there would be no issues. Or if, trash was more required, there'd be no issues. There's a couple just different factors that have led to this circumstance now where Bricked has to pre-clear. So Bricked is pre-clearing with hidden logs. Well, the strategy that Bricked did here in their run, let's find, this is the second group. So in their second group here, they're starting far away from the first group. So far away that the first group doesn't register what the second group is doing on the game's system that allows you to talk to each other in the back end. This back end is where you're able to record everything, and that then is uploaded into the log website. So everything that you do is recorded. Well, it's not really recorded because they're split up, and they need to be able to have everything to be able to submit to the logs. So what do? They combine their logs. They copy and paste and try and snip stuff together. And in the process of snipping stuff together, according to the logs team, it was evident that it was clearly manipulated, and that's against the rules according to the logs management. So now in the past, like I said, this game is not 4 or 5 months old. It's not some new idea. They've been running these raids for 5 years now. And in the past, when the previous best raids were run, people were snipping logs and adding logs together. So there's kind of this gray area now where this group feels like, okay, well, what was done in the past was okay. So what we're doing now, as long as it's recorded and we are clearly not doing anything in, bad intent, it's okay. And I see that side of things from Bricked, where it's like, we have these runs recorded, we're not doing anything, against the rules, we just don't want to be public about it because we have these secret strategies that we want to implement to the best of our abilities, that we don't want other people to steal our strategies. And I think that's a little unfortunate on the other side, as someone that's not part of their group, where it's like, be a community. The speedrun community is all about the hype and growing together and getting better. But on the Brick side, the reward isn't from these guys streaming, right? Like, none of these guys are making money from the process of the speedrun compared to, like I was talking about before with retail, right? The guys that have sponsors, the hype over the course of these race for world firsts, those guys, they're making thousands of dollars from the process. And that's not what these guys have. These guys, their only reward is being number one. That's what matters to them, the end result. So for that reason, I understand why they wouldn't care about showing the process, because the process doesn't really matter. They're just going to be the best at the end. So I think that's really it, right? These guys ended up being the best. The other group is 4 seconds behind, and they're okay with that. Like, from my understanding, they're not overly salty with Bricked splicing the logs. The main issue is the log management team saying, hey, because you spliced your logs and we told you not to do that, you're in trouble. So now their run has been deemed banned. This run is not valid. And a couple of the organizers, like Chris W. and Zerpy and Barador, their characters are permanently banned from participating in parses in the future. So their character can never be personally ranked #1 again because of their actions, according to the logs team. Because now to add that little spice, yeah, so Brick asked the management team and they said, hey, if we do this strategy, we're not able to have one combat log. We've tried everything. We've tried the mind vision, and something has changed since in the past. In the past, either these guys are splicing logs or the distance was different. What we have now, it doesn't allow us to do this strategy unless we combine logs together. And the management team said, okay, well, that's too bad. And so they did it anyways. And I respect that a lot. You know, like Brick still is just, they wanted to be fastest. So they went fastest and still added the logs together and said, you know, screw the haters. I want to see more of that in BWL. The thing about BWL is that it's more sequenced and there's not really as much potential for this kind of creative pre-clear, and I'm kind of thankful for that. BWL, we're hoping to get back to a nice fast just zoom where everyone can stream and record their gameplay, and maybe that will allow some of these Brick players to get more of a viewer base. Because on the other side, if you are able to stream your process, maybe you can start profiting from that and creating more of a community that way and being involved in speedrunning more. Because I do think it's a little unfortunate. I miss the days where on DMF week you would tune into Twitch and it'd be all these different speedruns that have tons of views. I want to get back to that speedrun community more, and that's kind of why I'm making this video, because it's been a cringe couple months when it comes to Molten Core. I'm looking forward to getting back to real World of Warcraft speedrunning, hopefully. So, till next time, just wanted to give some thoughts and explain my side of things. And maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe I need to make a follow-up video, so please tell me if I am not explaining things properly. And anyways, it's fun chatting. Till next time, guys. Peace.